Eli Grant was an ordinary boy in every possible way. He went to school like everyone else, sat in the back of his class, and spent most of his time trying not to be noticed. He wasn't the smartest, wasn't the strongest, and had no idea that anything about him was special. But everything changed one cold morning when anger and fear collided inside him, and something inside his chest woke up. It started with a simple argument in the school hallway. His best friend, Mason, had been bullied again, pushed to the floor by the older students. Eli had seen it too many times. His fists shook as he stepped forward, telling them to stop. The group laughed at him, calling him weak. The sound of their laughter filled his head until he could barely think. His heart beat faster, his skin grew hot, and for a second, he couldn't breathe. The next breath he took changed everything. A wave of heat burst from his mouth. It wasn't air. It wasn't smoke. It was fire, real, glowing, roaring fire that rolled across the hallway like a living thing. Lockers bent and melted. The walls blackened, and every single person froze in place. The bullies fell back screaming, and Mason's eyes went wide in horror. Eli stood there, shocked, as smoke rose from his hands. His shirt had burned away at the front, but his skin wasn't hurt. He didn't even feel pain, only heat. Deep, burning heat inside his chest, like something alive had woken up. For a long moment, no one moved. Then someone screamed, and chaos began. Teachers ran in shouting, the fire alarms screamed through the building, and students ran out of the halls. Eli tried to say something, but every time he opened his mouth, a small spark came out. He covered his lips, terrified. His hands shook so badly he could barely move. Mason grabbed his arm and pulled him out the back door, shouting at him to run. Smoke filled the sky above the school, and in that smoke were shapes. Faint, strange shapes that flickered like giant wings. No one saw them clearly, but satellites orbiting above the earth did. The moment Eli had breathed fire, a massive energy spike had spread from the school into the upper atmosphere. It was as if a beacon had turned on after being silent for ages. Somewhere in the far distance, beyond the clouds, something ancient had felt it. And it was waking up. Eli ran across the football field, coughing and shaking. His breath came out hot enough to melt frost off the grass as he passed. He didn't understand what was happening to him. He wanted to think it was a dream, some kind of strange accident. But when he looked at his reflection in the locker room window, he saw something that made him step back. His eyes were glowing faint orange, and faint cracks of light ran across his skin for a moment before fading. Mason stared at him, terrified but trying to stay calm. "What was that, Eli? You breathed fire. How is that even possible?" Eli shook his head, unable to answer. His voice trembled when he finally spoke. "I don't know. I just got angry and then it happened." His chest hurt as if something deep inside wanted to burst out again. Within an hour, the school was surrounded. Police cars, black vans, and helicopters circled above. Men in suits stepped out wearing badges with no names. They moved fast, setting up fences and scanners. The news channels arrived too, but the government silenced them within minutes. The official story would later say it was a gas explosion, but the scientists at a secret facility already knew it wasn't. The readings they picked up were unlike anything from Earth. It matched no chemical, no radiation, they couldn't even explain it. And yet, the pattern was familiar to something found in an old classified archive, a myth that scientists had dismissed centuries ago. Energy signatures resembling those recorded in ancient dragon fossils found frozen in Antarctica. It made no sense. Dragons were stories, not real creatures. But the energy spike had the same signature, and it had come from a teenage boy. Eli and Mason were taken to a safe zone for questioning. The agents kept their distance, speaking into their radios as if afraid to get too close. Eli's body temperature stayed far above normal, yet he didn't sweat or show signs of sickness. Every now and then, small flickers of heat escaped his mouth when he breathed. He tried to control it, but the more nervous he got, the stronger it became. One agent asked him, "Do you know what you are?" Eli looked down and whispered, "I'm human, I think." The man's face tightened. "Then tell me how you melted a hallway with your breath." Eli didn't answer. How could he? He didn't understand it himself. Outside, strange things started happening across the world. Observatories picked up signals from deep space, low-frequency vibrations that weren't random. They carried patterns almost like speech. The translation systems couldn't decode them, but one message repeated clearly, "Heir of Flame has awakened." Scientists thought it was a coincidence, some interference from cosmic radiation. But others weren't so sure. At a secret command center, military leaders watched as satellites showed a strange glow forming high above the clouds. Like a storm, but it wasn't made of water. It was heat. Tremendous heat spreading across the atmosphere, forming massive circular shapes. One general muttered, "It's like something's coming through." Meanwhile, Eli sat alone in a white interrogation room. His hands were cuffed, though the metal had already started to soften from the warmth of his skin. He stared at the mirror on the wall, knowing people were watching from behind it. His heart beat louder with every second. He felt trapped, scared, and more than anything, confused. His thoughts kept repeating the same question. What am I? The more he thought, the stronger the burning in his chest became. It was like his heart wasn't just a heart anymore. It was a furnace. And when the pain became too much, he screamed, and the cuffs exploded in a flash of fire. Alarms blared again. The agents outside ran for cover. Cameras went static as the heat overloaded the systems. Eli stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by glowing ash, his eyes now burning gold. The metal walls began to twist. The fire didn't burn him. It listened to him, moved like a living thing responding to his breath. He dropped to his knees, gasping, his hands pressed to the floor. The flames went out instantly, as if obeying his fear. But the damage was done. Every radar in orbit caught the burst. And far beyond the stars, something massive stirred. In the dark reaches of space, between frozen moons and ancient debris, enormous shapes shifted. Their scales reflected starlight. Their wings spanned kilometers. They had slept for centuries, hidden and silent. But the moment the signal reached them, their eyes opened. One by one, they turned toward Earth. The largest of them, its scales red like molten rock, lifted its head and spoke a word that echoed across the void. Heir. And then they began to move. Back on Earth, Eli collapsed, shaking. He felt cold for the first time since it all began. Mason rushed in, ignoring the soldier's warnings, helping him to his feet. "You're burning up," Mason whispered. Eli tried to smile, but his voice came out like a whisper of smoke. "Something's coming," he said. "I can feel it. Something's coming for me." Outside the facility, the clouds started glowing red, and a low, distant roar rolled through the sky. Deep, ancient, and alive. And somewhere in orbit, dragons turned their gaze toward Earth. They had felt the fire that shouldn't exist. And now they were coming to claim it. The world had seen strange things before. Storms that broke cities, lights in the sky that people called UFOs, but nothing like what was happening now. It began with a single ripple across the clouds. A sound like thunder but stretched too long to be natural. People came out of their homes and schools to look up. The clouds weren't gray anymore. They were glowing red, swirling like a giant firestorm forming high above the world. From orbit, satellites showed massive energy readings spreading from one point on the planet, right above the facility where Eli Grant was being held. The scientists inside didn't know what to make of it. The air vibrated with a strange hum, like something alive was breathing through the sky. Inside the base, Eli sat in a dark room surrounded by guards. He had stopped fighting. He just stared at the floor, trying to understand what was happening to him. Every time he breathed, the lights flickered. He could feel something out there, something calling to him. It wasn't a voice, not exactly. It was more like a pull deep in his chest, a heartbeat that wasn't his own. Mason sat near the wall, nervous but refusing to leave. "They're saying it's an energy storm," he said quietly. Eli shook his head. "No, it's not a storm. It's them." Mason frowned, confused. "Them who?" Eli didn't answer because he didn't know how he knew. He just did. Outside, the wind turned strange. The temperature rose even though it was winter. Birds fled in massive flocks. Then came the light, a long golden crack stretching across the clouds, brighter than lightning. It opened wider and wider, revealing something moving behind it. For a moment the world froze. Cameras all over the planet turned toward the sky. Every news station broadcasted the same thing. From that burning crack, shapes began to emerge, massive, winged shapes that blotted out the sun. Their scales shimmered like metal and fire mixed together. Their wings stretched miles wide. One after another, they passed through the clouds, roaring as they descended toward Earth. People screamed, cars stopped, and entire cities went silent. The military reacted instantly. Fighter jets scrambled. Missiles were armed. Commanders shouted orders, thinking this was an alien invasion. But the dragons didn't attack. They moved in formation, flying with precision and grace. Some hovered over oceans, others circled mountains, and one enormous shape, larger than any aircraft, headed directly toward the city where Eli was. As it approached, the heat from its wings melted snow on the ground. Soldiers pointed their weapons up, but none dared fire. The sound of its roar shook every building to its foundation. Then a voice thundered through every communication system, through radios, TVs, and even phone signals. A voice that wasn't human. The heir of flame has awakened. The words echoed everywhere at once, spoken in dozens of languages at the same time. People around the world fell silent, staring at their screens. No one knew what it meant, but in the facility Eli felt it inside his bones. His vision flashed with images. Giant cities made of glowing stone, dragons flying through endless skies, and a tall figure standing in fire, speaking in a voice that sounded like his own. He gasped and fell forward, clutching his chest. Mason shouted for help as soldiers rushed in, but Eli's skin began to glow faint red again. The base's alarms started to scream. The commander shouted for evacuation, but before anyone could move, the ground began to shake. The largest dragon had arrived. It landed outside the facility, its claws sinking deep into the concrete. The air shimmered around it like heat from a volcano. Its eyes were the size of small cars, glowing gold and filled with something ancient, wisdom, fury, and sorrow all mixed together. Every gun on the base turned toward it. But when it spoke, no one could move. He is here. The sound wasn't heard by ears. It was felt inside every mind. The soldiers froze, unable to breathe, their weapons trembling in their hands. The dragon lowered its head, smoke rising from its nostrils. "Return the heir to us," it said. "The balance must be restored." The commander shouted back through the loudspeaker, voice cracking, "Stand down! You are violating Earth airspace." The dragon's eyes narrowed. "Earth?" it said slowly, as if testing the word. "You speak of borders, but he belongs to no world." Inside, Eli stood at the window, staring at the creature that had come for him. He felt no fear. He felt recognition. The dragon looked directly at him, even through the thick walls. For a long moment, everything was silent. Then Eli whispered, "You came." The dragon nodded slowly, its enormous wings folding against its body. Mason grabbed Eli's arm. "You can't go out there. They'll kill you." Eli turned, his eyes glowing faint orange again. "If I don't go, more will come. They're not here to fight. They're here because of me." Before anyone could stop him, Eli pushed past the guards. The moment he stepped outside, the air grew hotter. The soldiers shouted, aiming their guns, but the dragon growled softly, and every weapon's barrel melted as if made of wax. Eli walked across the cracked ground, the heat from the dragon's body washing over him like a wave. The creature lowered its head until its eye was level with him. It spoke in a language Eli didn't know, yet somehow he understood every word. "You carry the flame of the firstborn," it said. "It should not exist among humans again. Yet it burns within you. Do you know what you are?" Eli swallowed hard, shaking his head. "No, I don't." The dragon's gaze softened. "You are our heir, born in the wrong world. The soldiers started yelling, ordering the dragon to back away. The commander gave the signal to fire, but before the missiles could launch, the dragon raised its wings. A single flap sent a shockwave across the base, knocking every human to the ground. The missiles disarmed in midair and fell harmlessly to the dirt. The dragon looked down at Eli. "We came for you because the bond between worlds has been broken too long. Without you, both sides will burn." Eli didn't understand, but deep inside, he felt the truth. He wasn't supposed to be ordinary. He wasn't supposed to live a normal life. The fire inside him wasn't random, it was ancient. He looked up at the dragon, voice trembling. "If I go with you, what happens to Earth?" The dragon's eyes dimmed for a moment. "That depends on what you choose to become." In the distance, more dragons appeared through the clouds, hundreds of them, flying in formation. The entire sky glowed red like a burning ocean. The world's militaries prepared for global defense, but their weapons couldn't lock on. The dragons moved too fast, too gracefully. Around the planet, the same message repeated, "Do not fear, we seek the air." Back in the command center, the general stared at the monitors in disbelief. "They're not attacking," he muttered. "They're waiting." A scientist beside him whispered, "Waiting for what?" The general's face turned pale. "For the boy." At that exact moment, the dragon outside lowered its head until Eli could touch its snout. The scales were hot, but not painful, more like the warmth of a living sun. Eli placed his hand there, and for the first time, he heard a heartbeat that wasn't his own. His chest flared with light, and for a second, his body seemed to glow like molten gold. The dragon's eyes widened. "The bond returns," it said softly. "The world remembers." Then everything went silent. The sky, the wind, even the sound of the soldiers breathing, all stopped. The world itself seemed to hold its breath. And in that silence, far beyond the clouds, something else moved. A shadow larger than the dragons, darker than space itself. Something older. Something that did not want the air to be found. The sky cracked again, and this time the light wasn't red. It was black. The dragons looked up, growling in unison. Eli felt a chill spread through his body as the air turned heavy. The dragon beside him raised its head, spreading its wings protectively. "It's too soon," it rumbled. "They have awakened as well." Eli looked up, fear rising in his chest. "Who are they?" The dragon's golden eyes glowed brighter, and its voice came like thunder across the mountains. "The shadows of the flame, the ones who destroyed our world." And as the black shapes began to break through the dark sky, the humans and dragons alike realized that what was coming was not war. It was something far worse. The night after the dragons arrived was unlike any night in human history. The sky glowed with red and gold streaks as their wings cut through the clouds. Across the world, people watched in awe and terror. Some prayed, some screamed, and others simply stared, unable to understand what was happening. But above all the noise and fear, one truth spread faster than any news report. The dragons were not here to destroy. They were searching for something. And every radar, every satellite, every camera pointed to one location, the boy named Eli Grant. Inside the military facility, chaos ruled. Commanders argued with scientists. Some wanted to hand Eli over to the dragons, hoping to avoid war. Others called for his termination, claiming he was an alien weapon. Eli could hear them yelling through the glass walls, but their words felt far away. His body still ached from the energy that had burst out of him. He sat on the cold floor, watching faint orange lines flicker beneath his skin. The glow would come and fade like a heartbeat. Each time it pulsed, he felt a sound in his head, a deep hum, like distant thunder. Mason was beside him, exhausted but refusing to leave. "You need to tell them you're not dangerous," he said quietly. Eli shook his head. "They won't believe me. Even I don't believe me." He looked at his reflection in the mirror across the room. His eyes weren't fully human anymore. Gold flecks shimmered around the pupils, like fire trapped behind glass. "Something inside me wants out," Eli whispered. "It's getting stronger." Mason frowned. What does it want? Eli hesitated before answering. To fly. Before Mason could say more, alarms blared again. Red lights flashed across the halls. The soldiers shouted orders, running toward the upper decks. A voice came over the loudspeakers. Unidentified objects entering atmosphere. Non-draconic signatures detected. The scientists froze. The dragon watchers outside lifted their heads to the sky. Far above, the black rift that had opened earlier was expanding. Out of it came dark shapes, smaller than the dragons but faster. They looked like shards of obsidian with wings of smoke. Wherever they passed, the air turned cold. The dragons roared in unison, forming a defensive circle around the city. Eli felt a stabbing pain in his chest as the dark shapes drew closer. Felt like something was trying to tear him in two. He fell to the floor, gasping for air. Mason shouted for help, but no one dared enter. The heat around Eli rose so high that the floor started to glow red. His skin burned with light again, the orange lines turning brighter, sharper, forming patterns across his chest and arms. They weren't random. They looked like scales, faint and golden, glowing through his skin. Mason stepped back, eyes wide. Eli, your skin. What's happening? Eli groaned, clutching his chest. It's marking me, he said through gritted teeth. The glow spread to his neck, and symbols appeared. Ancient runes that no one could read. But the dragons outside reacted immediately. They roared, their wings beating the air like thunder. The largest dragon turned toward the facility, its voice echoing in every mind. The air's mark has awakened. The humans didn't know what it meant, but the dragons did. That mark was a sign of bloodline, a link between the dragon kings of the old worlds and their chosen descendants. No human should have it. No creature of flesh and bone could carry that fire and survive. But Eli wasn't burning. He was enduring it. The dragon queen herself descended from the sky, her scales glowing pale white like a living moon. When she landed, her voice carried through every radio and device. Protect the air. The shadows have come. At the same moment, the black creatures tore through the atmosphere. They were not alive in the same way the dragons were. They were hollow, made of smoke and metal fused together. Their eyes were pits of darkness. Wherever they passed, light died. One of them struck the ground near the base, and an entire wing of the building vanished into ash. Soldiers opened fire, but their bullets passed through the creatures like mist. The dragons engaged them, breathing torrents of flame, but even dragon fire struggled against the blackness. It was not just shadow, it was the absence of flame itself. Eli struggled to his feet, holding his glowing chest. They're here for me, he whispered. Mason grabbed his arm. We have to run. But Eli shook his head. No. If I run, they'll destroy everything. They want the fire inside me. His eyes glowed brighter. And maybe I can fight them. Mason looked terrified. Fight them? You don't even know what you are. Eli took a shaky breath, staring at his burning hands. I'm starting to. Outside, the dragon queen raised her wings, unleashing a blinding beam of white fire that vaporized two of the shadow beasts instantly. But more poured through the rift. The humans watched helplessly as the sky turned into a war of flame and darkness. The scientists inside the base finally realized the truth. This wasn't a war between humans and dragons. It was a war that had begun long before humanity existed. And Eli was the reason it had restarted. The dragons called out to him, their voices echoing inside his mind. Heir of flame, awaken. The bond must be complete. Eli could barely stand, but when he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of another world. Mountains made of crystal, cities floating in light, and dragons flying through a golden sky. He saw a throne of fire, empty, waiting. He saw a man who looked like him, standing with wings made of flame. Then the vision shattered, and he opened his eyes. He knew what he had to do. He walked toward the exit as Mason shouted for him to stop. The heat around Eli grew unbearable. The metal doors warped as he passed. When he stepped outside, the dragon queen lowered her massive head. You carry the mark of the first flame, she said. You are what we lost. Eli looked up at her, breathing heavily. If I have this power, how do I use it? The dragon's golden eyes softened. Do not use it, she said. Let it remember you. Before he could answer, one of the shadow creatures dove toward him, screeching like metal tearing apart. Eli instinctively raised his hands. A wall of pure fire erupted from the ground, blasting the creature out of the sky. The flames didn't burn the dragons or the humans. They burned only the shadow. Everyone watched in stunned silence as Eli stood surrounded by swirling embers. His eyes were now completely golden. The mark across his chest glowed like molten gold. The dragon queen bowed her head slightly. It begins again, she said softly. The soldiers, seeing the impossible, lowered their weapons. The air crackled with power. Mason ran to Eli's side, staring at him in shock. You just controlled fire, he said. Eli looked down at his hands, still shaking. No, he replied quietly. It controlled me. Above them, the black rift began to close, but not before a final roar echoed from within it. A sound so deep it made the ground quake. The dragon queen's expression changed from awe to fear. That voice, she whispered. It cannot be. Eli looked up. What is it? The queen's wings trembled. The Dark One, the devourer of flame. He was destroyed long ago, or so we believed. As the rift faded, the sky turned red again. The surviving dragons regrouped, wounded but unbroken. The humans stood in silence, realizing their world had changed forever. The dragons weren't myths anymore, and neither was the boy who could breathe fire. That night, as the fires died and the sky grew quiet, Eli stood alone on the roof of the half-ruined base. His glowing mark had dimmed, but it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that belonged to something older than time. He looked toward the stars, whispering to himself, if I'm really their heir, then what comes next? Far above, hidden beyond the dark side of the moon, a pair of enormous eyes opened, eyes older than the stars themselves. And a voice rumbled through the void, soft but filled with hunger. The flame has returned. This time I will claim it myself. The sky burned red over the city. At first, people thought it was the reflection of fires from below, the result of riots, burning cars, and the chaos that had spread since Eli's secret came out. But then the light began to move, flowing and swirling like a storm alive with purpose. The sound that followed wasn't thunder. It was deeper, heavier, something that rumbled through the bones of every living thing. People froze on rooftops, on streets, in homes. Everyone felt it, the feeling of something vast and old entering their world. Far above the clouds, where no human aircraft could reach, the dragons broke through. They didn't descend like invaders in formation. They fell like comets. Each one was massive, wings the size of city blocks, their bodies shimmering with scales of living metal and light. As they pierced the atmosphere, the air screamed with heat. Fire trails painted the horizon. The largest of them, dark silver with eyes like molten gold, led the others. She was their queen, and she had come for one purpose, to find the heir. Eli stood at the center of the school courtyard, surrounded by armed soldiers. His breath came in ragged gasps. His skin glowed faintly from within, and every exhale sent a shimmer of heat into the air. The soldiers aimed rifles at him, their voices shaking as they shouted commands he barely heard. He wasn't trying to fight. He didn't even understand what he was anymore. The fire inside him pulsed like a second heartbeat, growing stronger with every passing minute. General Harris, a hard-faced man with gray hair and tired eyes, shouted from behind the barricades. Contain the target. Don't let him out of your sight. He turned to his lieutenant. What's our air defense status? The officer swallowed hard. Sir, it's gone. The radar's useless. Everything's jammed. We're picking up thousands of heat signatures descending from orbit. Thousands? Harris asked, his face draining of color. Why, yes, sir. And they're big. Bigger than anything we've ever seen. The ground began to shake. The tremor was faint at first, like a distant earthquake, but soon it became stronger. Cracks ran across the courtyard concrete. Dust and glass fell from nearby buildings. The sound that followed silenced everyone. It was a roar, ancient and full of command. It came from above, rolling down from the burning sky like the voice of a god. Eli's knees buckled. The sound pierced through his mind, familiar yet terrifying. He clutched his head, eyes wide, as flashes of memory burst through him. Towers made of obsidian, winged shadows flying across twin suns, a golden throne surrounded by flames, and a voice that whispered his name through time. Elian, he gasped. The name wasn't human, but it was his. Somewhere deep in his blood, it awoke something old and royal. He looked up, tears of heat running down his face, as the first dragon broke through the clouds. The world fell silent. The creature descended like a falling star, its body glowing with silver and blue fire. Its wings stretched wide, blocking out the sunlight. Its scales shifted colors, like molten metal cooling and heating in rhythm with its breath. When it landed, the ground split open beneath its claws. The soldiers staggered back in fear, some dropping their weapons entirely. The dragon lowered its enormous head, eyes glowing bright enough to blind. Eli stood motionless. He should have been terrified, but instead his heartbeat slowed. He felt recognized. The dragon spoke, not with sound, but directly into every mind nearby. Heir of flame, blood of Elian the firstborn, we have come. The soldiers screamed and opened fire. Bullets tore through the air but evaporated inches from the dragon's scales. The beast barely moved. It exhaled once, and the shockwave of heat knocked everyone off their feet. Fire trucks, cars, even tanks rolled backward from the force. The dragon's gaze never left Eli. General Harris, coughing from the smoke, shouted into his radio, "We are under attack. All units. Fall back. Repeat. Fall back." But there was nowhere left to run. More dragons emerged through the red clouds. 10, 20, then hundreds. Their roars shook the atmosphere. Cities across the world reported the same. Shadows passing over the sun, the ground cracking, fires forming in the shape of circles where they landed. It wasn't an invasion, it was a summoning. The silver dragon lowered its head again, this time bowing. The earth trembled with the motion. "Your fire has returned to life, young one." The voice spoke again. "You are the last of the line that once ruled beside us." The bond between dragon and human, broken by betrayal, now breathes again. Eli stared at the creature, shaking his head. I'm just a student. I don't understand any of this." "You will," the dragon said. "Your kind forgot, but we did not." The soldiers regrouped, forming a tight circle around Eli. The general stepped forward, defiance in his voice despite the trembling in his legs. "He's human. You can't take him." The dragon turned its enormous head toward him. "He is more than human. He is our heir." "And if we refuse?" the general asked. For a moment the world held its breath. The dragon's eyes flared like suns. Its wings unfolded, and a wave of heat spread outward, melting the concrete beneath it. The soldier's armor began to glow red. Then, just before everything burned, Eli shouted, "Stop!" The flames froze in midair. The dragon obeyed. The soldiers fell back, gasping for air. Eli's hands were glowing now, his veins lit like molten gold. The dragon bowed its head lower. The queen's voice filled the sky. "The air commands. The flame listens." Eli's breath shook. "No one's taking me anywhere," he said, voice cracking. "Not until I understand what's happening." The queen's gaze softened. "Then learn, Elian of Earth. But know this, others have seen your fire. They will come. And when they do, they will not seek peace." With that, the dragons spread their wings. The shockwave shattered glass across miles. In seconds, they were gone, vanishing into the red sky, leaving only the scent of smoke and the trembling earth behind. Eli fell to his knees. Around him, soldiers and agents whispered, terrified and confused. The general lowered his weapon, staring at the boy. "What are you, son?" Eli looked up, his eyes glowing faint orange. I wish I knew. But deep inside, the voice of the queen echoed softly in his mind. Heir of flame, the war to reclaim the bond has begun. And above the planet, hidden behind a storm of clouds and smoke, hundreds of dragon eyes turned toward Earth, watching, waiting. The world had changed overnight. Every screen on Earth replayed the same impossible scene. Dragons landing on human soil, bowing before a teenage boy who breathed fire. Governments went into lockdown, militaries across the planet armed themselves, and fear spread faster than the flames themselves. People called Eli Grant a weapon, a curse, a god, a myth. But to Eli, he was just a boy caught in a war he didn't understand. He was being held in a reinforced facility beneath a military base somewhere in Nevada. Thick walls surrounded him. Cameras watched his every move. Scientists in white coats spoke in whispers behind the glass. They wanted to study him, to find out what made him burn like that. But Eli could feel something else inside him growing stronger every day. His skin sometimes shimmered with faint heat lines. His dreams were filled with wings and fire and a golden throne that called his name. Dr. Kellen, the lead researcher, leaned forward on the observation glass one morning. Eli, she said through the intercom, your readings are unstable. Your energy output is rising. We need to know what triggers it. Eli didn't look at her. He was staring at his hands. The faint glow beneath his skin pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. I don't trigger it, he said quietly. It's like it's alive. Before she could answer, alarms began to blare. The entire facility shook. Red lights flashed. A soldier burst into the room behind Dr. Kellen, shouting, "Contact on the outer perimeter. They're here." The scientist turned pale. Who? The soldier didn't answer, but Eli already knew. He could feel it, the pressure in the air, the way the temperature spiked. The dragons had returned. The ground rumbled violently as explosions rocked the base. The walls around Eli began to crack. Flames licked through the ceiling vents. The intercom screeched with static, and then a voice thundered through every speaker in the facility. He is ours. It was the Dragon Queen. Panic broke loose. Soldiers ran through the corridors shouting orders. Jets screamed overhead, launching missiles into the sky. But every explosion was met with another roar from above. Deep, ancient, unstoppable. Eli pressed his hands against the glass of his containment cell. His heart pounded. The fire inside him surged, hotter and brighter than ever before. The glass began to melt. Dr. Kellen shouted, "No, wait! Eli, stop!" The entire wall exploded outward. Heat flooded the room like a living storm. Eli stood in the center, surrounded by fire that moved with his breath. His eyes blazed like molten gold. "Let me out," he said softly. No one dared to stop him. He walked out of the burning chamber as the base shook from another impact. The roof split open. A massive shadow descended through the smoke. A dragon, wings folding as it landed atop the ruins. Soldiers fired rockets. The dragon barely noticed. It lowered its head and roared so loud the air shattered. Eli looked up at it. The dragon's voice echoed in his mind. "Elian, we come for you. The humans mean to cage the flame. They will destroy what they do not understand." Eli shook his head, flames swirling around his feet. "They're scared," he said. "They think I'll burn everything." "And they are right," the dragon replied. "The bond cannot exist in chains." But before Eli could respond, a deafening blast ripped through the air. A missile struck the dragon square in the chest, sending it crashing into the mountain beyond the base. Eli screamed as the fire in his chest exploded outward. A wave of heat and energy tore across the desert, flattening everything in a mile radius. Cameras caught the moment live. Around the world, people watched in shock as a single human boy unleashed a firestorm that erased a mountain. Governments immediately declared him a global threat. The United Nations called for his capture by any means necessary. When the smoke cleared, Eli stood alone in a crater of molten glass. His clothes were gone, his skin glowing faintly with red cracks of energy. The dragon that had come for him was gone. its body turned to glowing dust. Eli dropped to his knees. For the first time, he realized he had killed one of them. He whispered, "What am I?" But the answer came not from within him, this time it came from the sky. "You are both, human and dragon, fire and flesh." The voice was the queen's. Her colossal form appeared through the clouds, wings stretching for miles. Her eyes burned with sorrow and pride. "You must choose, Elian. The humans will never stop hunting you. But the dragons will not wait much longer. The bond between worlds cannot heal while you stand between them." Eli looked around at the destruction. The soldiers who survived were crawling through the ruins, terrified. Some pointed weapons at him. Others just stared, too stunned to move. He felt the heat rising again, his anger feeding it. "Why can't they just stop fighting?" he shouted. "I didn't want this." The queen's voice softened. "Neither did we. But your flame cannot exist without war. It was born from it. You are its balance and its curse." As she spoke, another army approached on the horizon. Human tanks, drones, and aircraft swarming toward the burning base. The world had chosen its side. And Eli stood between them, the last spark of peace vanishing in the smoke. Dr. Kellen appeared behind him, her lab coat scorched, her face streaked with ash. "Eli," she said, trembling, "you have to run. They won't stop until you're dead." He turned to her, his eyes glowing faint orange. "If I run, they'll destroy everything trying to find me." She swallowed. "Then what will you do?" Eli looked toward the sky, where the queen hovered above the clouds like a living god. "I'll end it," he said quietly. "One way or another." The air around him began to shimmer. Flames rose from the ground, swirling upward into a massive storm of light. The soldiers retreated, shouting in panic. The sky turned crimson. The queen's voice boomed across the battlefield. "Heir of flame, decide your path. Are you of earth or of the sky?" Eli closed his eyes. His memories flashed before him. His school, his friends, his mother's voice, the faces of the soldiers who feared him, the dragon who died trying to save him. When he opened his eyes again, the fire inside him had changed. It no longer burned out of control. It moved with purpose. He spread his hands wide. The storm calmed. The queen watched silently. "I am both," he said, "and I'll fight for both." A deep silence followed. Then the queen roared in approval. But the humans below saw something else. A declaration of war. Jets soared upward. Missiles streaked toward the sky. The dragons responded with fire. The world erupted in chaos. Above it all, Eli rose through the smoke, surrounded by flames that took the shape of wings. His human heart beat in rhythm with the fire's pulse. The war of the flames had begun. And somewhere in the heart of the storm, a single truth echoed through time. When dragons and humans fight, the world burns twice. The world was burning. Above the clouds, dragons fought fighter jets in fiery streaks of red and silver. Below, entire cities glowed beneath the reflection of their flames. The air itself shimmered from heat and ash. The war of the flames had begun, and there was no safe place left. Every government, every military, every person with a weapon had turned it toward the sky. Humanity was fighting for survival. And at the center of it all, Eli Grant floated between heaven and earth, surrounded by a storm of fire that obeyed only him. His skin shimmered like molten gold, and his eyes glowed with the light of two worlds. Half of him burned with the ancient fire of dragons. The other half pulsed with the fragile, stubborn heart of humanity. He was both, and because of that, neither side trusted him. The queen's voice boomed across the sky, echoing through every dragon in flight. "Heir of flame, choose your side. Your fire was born with us. Your blood belongs to the sky." Her massive wings cast shadows that stretched for miles. Lightning flashed across her scales. She was beautiful and terrifying, majestic as a god of old. Her army of dragons circled above her, waiting for her command to strike. But on the ground, the humans were ready too. Rows of tanks, missile launchers, and orbital cannons pointed toward the heavens. General Harris stood at the front of his troops, his uniform scorched and torn. He had seen cities fall and skies burn, but he refused to surrender. He spoke into his radio, voice hard. All forces, prepare to fire. If the dragons descend, unleash everything we've got. Sir, one of his officers said softly, what about the boy? Harris didn't look up. He made his choice, but that wasn't true, not yet. Eli hovered between them, hearing both sides in his mind. His heart ached. Everywhere he looked, he saw fear. Dragons feared losing the last of their royal bloodline. Humans feared extinction. Both saw him as the key and the weapon. The queen roared again, louder this time. Elian, you carry the fire of creation. End this war. Burn the weak. Restore the bond through flame. Her words cracked something inside him. He remembered the dragon he had accidentally killed in Nevada. He remembered the faces of soldiers dying in the heat of his own fire. And he remembered his mother's voice, the last thing she said before he was taken. You don't have to destroy to be strong. Eli clenched his fists. Flames poured from his palms, but he no longer feared them. They moved with his will now. The fire wasn't rage anymore. It was life. It was light. He looked up at the queen. I will end the war, he shouted, his voice echoing through the clouds. But not your way. The queen's eyes narrowed. Then you choose the humans. No, Eli said. I choose balance. The air exploded. The dragon's dove, wings cutting through clouds like blades. Humans opened fire, missiles screaming upward. The sky became a battlefield of smoke and flame. And in the center of it all, Eli rose higher, glowing brighter with every breath. He spread his arms. The fire around him grew until it became something new. A great storm shaped like wings that spanned the horizon. The dragons stopped mid-flight. The humans stopped firing. Everyone could feel it, the heat, the weight, the sheer power of what he had become. Eli's voice rolled like thunder across both armies. Enough! The word itself carried power. The flames in the air froze, hanging motionless. Missiles stopped in midair. Dragons hovered, their wings caught in invisible wind. Every sound vanished. The battlefield turned still. Eli floated between the two forces, surrounded by a circle of burning light. His body glowed so bright it hurt to look at him. This war ends now, he said, his tone steady. Humans are not your slaves, and dragons are not monsters. We both forgot what the bond meant. The queen's massive eyes softened, but her voice trembled with anger. You cannot repair a broken world, my heir. It was shattered long before you were born. Eli took a deep breath. Then I'll make a new one. He raised his hands toward the sky. The flames that surrounded him rose higher, towering pillars of fire that connected heaven and earth. They twisted together, forming a massive ring of burning energy. The humans shielded their eyes. The dragons cried out in awe. General Harris shouted over the radio, "Fall back! Everyone, fall back!" But no one could move. The air was alive. The queen watched silently as Eli's body began to dissolve into pure light. You can't contain it, she warned. The fire of the bond will consume you. Eli smiled faintly. Maybe it's not supposed to be contained. He spread his arms wide one last time. The fire exploded outward, not as destruction, but as light. It rolled across the battlefield, through cities, through mountains, across oceans. It didn't burn. Cleansed. Every dragon, every human, every living creature felt it. For a moment, the entire planet glowed beneath a golden sun that wasn't the sun at all. It was Eli. When the light faded, the dragons were gone. Their massive forms had turned into streams of glowing embers that rose into the upper atmosphere, vanishing among the stars. The sky cleared. The fires on Earth went out. The war was over. Eli was gone too. General Harris stood in silence, his soldiers looking up at the empty sky. Dr. Kellen, watching from a distant bunker, whispered softly, "He did it, but she was wrong." Eli hadn't vanished completely. High above the planet, in the silence of the upper atmosphere, a faint glow lingered, a small golden spark floating among the clouds. Pulsed gently, as if breathing. Weeks passed. The world began to rebuild. Nations agreed to disarm. For the first time in centuries, peace wasn't just a word, it was real. But strange things began to happen. Some people started to show faint signs of glowing veins. Others felt warmth when they spoke of him. Children born after the firestorm were immune to heat, their eyes reflecting a soft amber light. Dr. Kellen looked up at the stars one night and whispered, "The flame sleeps in us now," and high above her, beyond sight, the golden spark pulsed again, brighter this time. Somewhere between the stars and the earth, a voice whispered through the wind, "The flame never dies. It only waits to be remembered." And so began the age of the new bond, an age where humans carried a little of the dragon's fire in their hearts. An age born not from war, but from one boy who refused to choose a side. The dragon Heir had returned to the stars, but his flame remained on earth.